Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hello, you're listening to the podcast. So there I was. This is episode 162. I was only going to hit one.
Only going to hit one. Come on. Right?
Oh, 10 near misses, but you know.
So
we had a Skymaster almost hit 10 airplanes. No, I was only going to hit one.
Only going to hit one. Oh, by the way, yeah, that was me, right?
Yeah. Holy smokes. Then, here's the thing. We'll get into that in a minute. We have got a bunch of thank yous and acknowledgments to make.
Oh my gosh.
This week. So, yeah. Let's start with thanking our sponsor, Robbie. Don't be a moron. Give Robbie a call.
Don't be a moron.
Robbie. HSI Wealth Strategies. Let him help you keep more in retirement, as well as make more while you get in there. We need to thank Aircraft Chris, his second month as a tanker aircraft commander. Thank you.
Thanks, Aircraft Chris.
Yeah. And then here's the embarrassing one, Fig. We, some time back, got a division lead, Kim Lee Nour, N-O-U-R, who has been a division lead for nigh on 2 years in August and has given us over $320. I have zero recollection of ever thanking Kim. Oh my God, is that embarrassing?
Well, if we did, we don't remember. So let's make it right.
Right? Exactly. So that brings along other advice. Don't get old. It's bad for your memory.
Bad.
Right. So, and Kenny Leidy was our April giveaway winner. We've got a new giveaway for June is now open. You can win a really cool book. And this came to us from Dusty Peterson. Dusty wrote, "Hi, gents. I was originally planning to reach out to suggest a possible guest for your show, Chief Master Sergeant Alger Pete Peterson, who served 29 years in the U.S. Air Force. He loved telling stories and would have jumped at the chance to share them. Sadly, Grandpa passed away on March 24th, 2025 from complications of pneumonia. Born on October 14th, 1934 in Minnesota, he joined the Air Force in 1953, trained at Sampson and Keesler Air Force bases, and served as a Level 5 electronic countermeasures technician. His career took him from Holloman Air Force Base to England, Rome, New York, and beyond, flying aboard C-47s, modified KC-135s, and serving as an instructor. He retired as a chief at Dover Air Force Base, decorated and proud. Before he passed, he published a memoir, Takeoffs and Landings, Memories of God, Family, and Country. And it's available on Amazon, but we are going to give away a copy to 4 folks who go to our sotherewas.us/giveaway page.
True. Or
just go to sotherewas.us. I've pinned it to the top. Click on the giveaway, and all you have to do is share the show to get points to get a chance. It'll close on June 30th. So if you want a copy of this amazing book, go on there. sotherewas.us. Yeah. Share the show. It ain't that hard.
It doesn't cost nothing. Share the show.
No, it doesn't cost nothing, and you get something for it. And we get something for your efforts to share. So, oh man, we had a plethora of titles this week, didn't we, Fig?
It was hard. It was hard to pick.
Sometimes it gets hard was one of the titles we considered. So we have with us this week, Mary Latimer, who, as I talked at the beginning of the show, is a CFI, CFII, MEI, DPE, AMP, IA.
I mean,
recipient of the... Yeah, we'll go to that. So, recipient of the Wright Brothers Master Pilot Award and the Master Mechanic Award. This woman has forgotten more about aviation than a lot of pilots will ever learn.
It's almost easier to say, what qual didn't she have? What aviation acronym is not included in her repertoire?
Right? Exactly. Because CFI, that's Certified Flight Instructor. And then there's Instrument Instructor. MEI is Multi-Engine Instructor. And then the big one there is DPE, Designated Pilot Examiner. She's the one that represented the FAA. You took her out on a check ride, and she determined whether or not you got your license. So,
And she also risked her life many times doing that, which you'll hear
yeah,
about on the podcast.
yeah, absolutely. Then the A&P and IA, that's airframes and power plants, and inspector authorization. She can sign off other mechanics work and all that kind of stuff. And the Master Pilot Award, Master Mechanic Award, that's 50 years of exemplary service in each of those roles. And what did I leave out, Fig? What else did she do for 26 years and change?
Well, she was an air traffic controller.
Right.
So,
Oh,
I mean,
man.
why wouldn't you be, right?
Right, because we're bored, nothing else to do with all those I's and AI's and A&P's going on. Oh my goodness! And
hey, don't lose the fact that it's an inspiring story because she was literally on the ground floor of females going into the aviation industry.
Absolutely. I mean, back in the 1970s, women didn't do these jobs. They just didn't. So she broke the glass sky, as it were, and has been inspiring women ever since. There's a really cool thing that she's doing, and I talk about it in the show, how we met, but she runs a place called the Gift Academy, Girls in Flight Training Academy, and she has helped countless women and men receive their licenses and achieve their dreams in aviation. So what an inspiring lady. And
really
I
is.
was so honored to spend time with her this last week while my daughter was working on her CFI with Mary.
It was an honor to get her stories. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. We had to cut her off at like an hour and a half or hour 40 minutes just because we were running out of time.
Right. Yeah. She's got a 175-page book coming out, and we might have covered 10% of her stories in that book on this one episode. So there's more to come from Mary.
Hey, do you remember what she said when you asked her how many hours she had?
Yes, right. Somewhere between twice as many and 4 times as many as you and me put together.
I know. And that's saying something.
Yeah, because we got a couple hours.
A couple. That's right.
Holy smokes. Yeah, just amazing. What a wonderful story. I'll tell you what, let's get out of the way and listen to Mary. But before we do that, I'm going to take just a minute and read through all the names of the people who have so generously given after having lost their sense of financial responsibility to support this show. So,
and we appreciate you. We question your judgment, but we do appreciate you. Thank you so much.
We do indeed. So right after this list, here comes Mary. I don't know. Don't do negative G pushovers in a Cessna.
Oh my gosh. There you go. I like that.
On behalf of Fig, Sticks, Bago, and me, thank everyone for all the hard-earned money that you've put into our pockets so we could make this show work for you. Now, I want to apologize up front if I miss anybody or if I misstate somebody or I'm about to butcher some names. I'm certain of it. So my apologies for that. For those of you that have been overlooked up until now, we are trying to make that right. And we also want to say that if we do miss you in this list, it is not intentional. Please reach out to me at repeat@sothereiwas.us, and I will make it right because you deserve to be acknowledged for all your efforts. So thank you. I'm going to start off with our direct donors on donorbox.org, which you get to through sothereiwas.us/donate. These are direct donations that come to us, not through Patreon. And then I'll go into the Patreon list. Opening is Michelle Langseth, who has sent us over $550. James Snyder, who has sent us $500. Chris Adams, also known as AirCav Chris, is at $400 on DonorBox. Caesar, Julius Taylor, has sent us $225. Steve Bates is up to $130. Sal Marinello is $100 on DonorBox. More over on Patreon, I'm sure. Jeff Cross, $100. Joe Anderson, $100. Bud Spencer, $100. John Rupp, Doc, $100. Pete Smith, $100. Alan Massey, $100. Dean Chick Correa, $100. Paul Mers, $100. David Olson, $50. Robert Murray, $50. Rich Walker, $50. Gerald Ray, $50. Wayne Tunick, $50. Kevin Spalding, $50. Phil Marie, $50. Brad Silcott, $25. Bill A., $25. Paul Shepherdson, $25. Phil Comer, $25. Jerry Mullen, $25. And Clint Budd, $20. Now, that's just the list on donorbox.org. So I'm going to go over to the Patreons now. And if I've misstated how much you've given, please also write to us and let us know. I'm going to go in chronological order on Patreon. Our first donor ever on Patreon was none other than Bago himself, and he is at $130. Earl McCoy, $130. And I mentioned Sal Marinello before at $100 on DonorBox, but on Patreon, he's up to $1,510. Thank you, Sal. Peter Robinson, $125. Mike Price, $125. Carl Stewart, $185. Scott Christensen, $120. Wayne Batzer, $120. John Hall, Sticks, $105. Hawktard, $15. Chris Blaine, $120. Will double L. Will Wilson, William Wilson. Bill Wilson, double L. That's how you know him on the show. Our tanker pilot from the Hollywood Guard, $90. Jonathan Knuckles, $85. Vapor was $40. I forget his show number. Seems to me it was in the 60s somewhere. It's Stay in the Ejection Envelope is his show title. Justin Lundberg Neff, $115. Scott Southard, $75. Chuck Thompson, $55. Kim Lee Nauer, that we just mentioned earlier in the opening, we're up to $321. Thank you. Eric Fletcher, $110. Jason Spears, Chucker, $1,400. Peter Duncan, $110. Stephen Blunk, $210. Marcus Ponte, $180. Keith Gallagher, $200. Steve Coach Dito, $105. Patrick Miller, $140. Peter Simon, $114. Roger Volstorff, $300. Statman, $95. Els Piloto, $285. And also known as Strecken. So Stretch. Thank you, Stretch. Cale Heckerson, $200. Ray Glanville, $90. Rick Mosley, $640. Aircav Chris, $200. Jim McHale, $80. Actually, Aircav Chris is up to $400 as of this month. Jeremy Strack, $160. Steve Morovitz, $100. Sean Moody, $10. JWH, $140. Matt Geyer, $210. Dennis Connolly, $140. Grease, $65. Whiskey Lee, $65. Richard Jackson, $65. Alan Sison, $65. Brent Daniels, $55. Brian Wormsbacher, $65. Mark Miller, $76. James Seagar, $100. Jay, $15. Kevin Glazer, $60. Rich W., $90. JP Sullivan, $60. Dizman, $120. Rob Denver Chief, $5. Todd Waltman, $200. Lawman, $100. Randall Ingalls, $50. Kevin, $45. Michelle Langseth, $240. Baytar, $30. Stephen Schofield, $60. Peter Duncan, $150. Kirby Sims, $25. Furious Luddite, $25. Rich Berry, $60. Kevin Spalding, $10. Brent Ross, $10. Kenny L., $10. Nick's Sokoli, $200. And Aircav Chris, there's the other $200 I just mentioned before. So that is, over the last 3 years, all the donations. And we wanted to take just this few minutes to say thank you. We're humbled. God bless you. And words escape our ability to express our true feelings of appreciation. So, without further ado, here comes Mary Latimer.
This here is a true story about crossing the pond at night in the world's smallest cockpit on the tanker through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that, thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond.
Well, there I was at about 5,000 feet, pointed straight down, it seemed like, at the ground, exceeding red line in a 172, and the elevator is not responding.
What?
That wasn't fun.
What? Well, okay, that's not good ever to hear, and that is terrifying opening to So There I Was, a terrifying opening So There I Was story, and I can't wait to later hear how this ends. Obviously, you're telling the story, so it turned out okay, but wow. Hey, this is Fig, everyone. Welcome to So There I Was. I'm at work, sort of, in Denver, Colorado. Where's my co-host?
I am at Wilbarger County Airport, Fox 05, just south of Altus, Oklahoma. And I am proud and honored to welcome our guest today, Mary Latimer, who is a CFI, CFII, MEI, AMP, AI, DE, former air traffic controller, EIEIO. Oh my God, the aviation acronyms never end. She has forgotten more about aviation than most pilots will ever learn, I can assure you. Mary, welcome, and thank you for coming on with us. We are excited. Where and when did you look up in the sky and see an airplane and go, oh, I can do that?
June of 1970. Okay. Made a trip out to the airport with, well, actually May, probably almost 55 years ago to this day. I came out to the airport with my mother and brother. My older brother was interested in flying lessons, so I went out to the airport with them. And I'm 16 years old, and there's this cute guy flirting with me. And then I find out later, well, I'm talking to friends, and they're like, that guy at the airport, he's married and has 2 kids. And I'm like, not interested. And then a little bit later, I found out that there was a different guy that was married with 2 kids. The guy who was flirting with me was actually single and not married and no kids. He hired my brother to be on the ground crew for the crop duster and convinced my brother that he would lose his job if his sister didn't drive him to work at 4:00 in the morning. And he already knows I'm not a morning person. So he took me flying on our first date, and I think it was a test. If I didn't like flying, I guess it was going to be the last date. But we got married 3 months later. And
oh my gosh!
Yeah.
How old were you?
16.
Did that require your mother's signature on the wedding certificate?
It did. She was not happy.
That's a great story.
That's awesome.
But
and then they were only together for 50 years or so. So, you know.
Is that it?
52 years. Sorry.
There you go. 52 years. So sadly, I met Lawrence, but he has recently passed. And so our condolences to you, Mary.
But thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. But can I ask you a more upbeat question?
Sure.
Here we go.
So was that your first date was flying? Was that your first flight?
Yes. And he stuck me in the left seat of that airplane.
History, so they say.
Yeah. He stuck me in the left seat of the airplane, showed me how to taxi on the center line, told me to push that throttle thing forward, and I didn't know I was supposed to get formal lessons, so off we go.
Right.
It was kind of like, it's just like driving a car, he said.
So from that time, I know you got married in 3 months. How long did it take you to start getting your pilot licenses?
Then the financial thing started kicking in. And so I soloed in November of 72. So 2.5, 2.5 years. So I soloed in November of 72. I got my private pilot license in the spring of 73, shortly after I'd started AMP school. And so A&P school 73, 74. Graduated 1974 with an A&P license, commercial, CFI, the whole 9 yards. And 1974, nobody wanted to hire a 5 foot tall female anything. And you get turned down for all the corporate gigs. The airlines the airlines had a height requirement of 5'6", so that's not even a consideration. And so,
how tall are you? How tall were you back then?
I was 5 feet tall, and I still am. I think
5 feet, 5 foot even.
5 feet nothing. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
5 foot nothing.
You're the same size as my mother-in-law.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I think we probably ought to cover. I don't know that we've ever covered things like A&P. So that's airframes and power plants mechanic. Yeah. That allows you the FAA license to work on airplanes, and the IA is inspector authorization.
Inspection authorization. You know, I may or may not be the first woman to hold an inspection authorization. And there was a woman that claimed that honor, but she got hers a year after I had mine. And the FAA told me
this is sort of a reoccurring theme that we run into with our female military pilots is that aviation, whether it's A&P being a mechanic or a flyer, it's kind of a male dominated industry, right? I mean, you were literally a groundbreaker.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was the only girl at the school. Yeah. And I mean, there was 125 students at the A&P school. I was, other than the secretary that kind of answered the telephones, I was the only female in the building. And
oh my gosh.
It was way too much fun, right?
Well, so did everybody treat you as one of the guys, or were the people? I mean, how was that for you?
It was brutal. It was brutal, and
you were going to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I had to prove myself to be adequate and equal. And in the first 6 weeks, I found an error in the FAA book. Okay, that we were using it as study material.
I bet they would just love that.
And I'm like, okay, the text doesn't correspond with the diagram. Which one is correct? And they're like, you're just a student here. Don't you think somebody else would have found this mistake? And I'm like, okay, it doesn't agree. Explain to me. And so some of the instructors got angry because I'm like challenging the FAA book. And when they realized that there actually was a mistake in the book and I had found it and nobody else had brought it to anyone's attention, a few of them started to respect me. So it was kind of half of them were respecting me and half of them just made it worse. So you had to just thread that needle. The next question, why did Mary go to A&P school? Okay, well, my husband and I wanted to buy and sell and rebuild airplanes, so somebody needs an A&P license. I was a better student. He made more money, so it made more sense for me to go to school. It seemed to be at the time. I didn't know girls didn't go to A&P school,
Well, I mean, why would you know that? No one ever told you.
Exactly. They didn't tell me I couldn't go. And then I found out much later that I signed up for the school, and apparently the instructors had a betting pool on how long I would last. And the school is 18 months long.
Of course.
And none of the instructors gave me more than 2 weeks. I was the only one that started when my class date started that graduated on time without having to do any makeup days. And then when the newspaper did an article, they refused to let the newspaper print the part where it said, oh, Mary has made the highest grades of anybody that's ever gone through the school. And they wouldn't let the newspaper print that.
Is that right?
Yeah. Don't want to hurt the poor guy's ego.
Well, they didn't want a rush of women to come take over the A&P profession, I guess, right?
Exactly.
What the hell?
We were 0.2% of the population at that moment in time.
Well, honestly, it's probably not a whole lot better now. I mean, I do see females who are tech ops people for the airline I work for. Right. And obviously, I do see female pilots, but not in large numbers.
Yeah, we're up to 2%. So the current number, 2%, so the decimal point moved a whole digit. I mean, a whole decimal point. It's awesome.
Fantastic.
Let's
get back into flying a little bit. So you went and got your CFI and your CFII and your commercial and all that sort of thing. What motivated you to move that far down the line in flying as well? I mean, that's awesome. A lot of people get their privates and they're content to do that, and not Mary. I guess you don't. I mean, you don't stick a toe in the water, do you, Mary?
I do not. And well, I mean, while I was going to school, I bought my first airplane and we rebuilt it. Okay, so I had an Aeronica L3, so I flew it back and forth to school, and I got an airplane to build time in, and the idea all along was I would become a professional pilot. Again, uneducated, I didn't know I had to be 5'6", and I hadn't figured out how to grow 6 more inches, but I'm flying my own airplane back and forth to school, and then, you just keep on taking those leaps forward. So might as well do this and then do that and keep on going. But I did enjoy flying. I'm not a big fan of turning wrenches. I'll go ahead and admit that. You do what's necessary, but you don't have to enjoy it. Yeah.
Well, fair enough. Yeah.
I'm looking up an Aeronica L3, 1941 military liaison aircraft.
Yes.
That's what your first plane was.
Yes.
I'm looking at the pictures. It looks like a bird dog. It looks like a 01 bird dog.
Yeah.
It's very,
very
similar.
Bird?
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
Well, how fun is that?
Armstrong starter.
Why
you missed
was
that height? An Armstrong starter.
No,
yeah.
I'm not.
Go ahead and tell him,
Mary. My bald.
You have
went
to hand
right over
prop
the top
it.
of my bald head.
You have to hand prop it.
There was no starter. You had to hand prop it. Got it.
Wow. I almost missed it too. Oh, man.
Sorry. Old joke.
Yeah, that's perfect. And it's dangerous, by the way, from all accounts. Hand propping an airplane can get you hurt.
Have you ever hand propped an airplane, repeat?
I did one time when I was in college. I had a 152 with a low battery. She would not crank. And I hand propped it.
You gotta have your you gotta have your shit together when you do it. You gotta be paying attention. Definitely got to be standing on not slippery surface.
Right. And have your center of gravity away from the prop.
Yeah. Weird, huh?
Yeah.
Huh. That's weird.
Unless you like
I preferred sitting in the airplane, letting other people swing it.
There's that.
Yeah.
That's the safest way to do it for you.
That's the end you want to be on right there. Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Well, let's keep this. Let's get so ATC application. ATC is in air traffic control, and so was that early on in your quest for an aviation career?
Yes. So once I finished school, basically January of 1975, I get the timelines, but anyway, they had opened up air traffic for what they call non-competitive. So it was targeted to women and minorities. And I took the test. The gentleman at the flight service station he'd known me because I've been flying in and out of there. That's where you went in and get your weather briefings. So he knew my trials and tribulations with the job market. And he's kind of like, come take the test. So I went and took the test, non-competitive, and I made a 94 on the test, decent score. And then I'm told, quote unquote, you're not enough of a minority. Okay.
What?
So, yeah, I thought women and minorities, I thought I qualified, but apparently it's women of a minority demographic. Anyway, so can't do this. Well, the gentleman who told me that I was not enough of a minority promised to mail me a packet when it ever opened up to anyone and everyone. And he did exactly what he promised. He mailed me a packet. It arrived. It was postmarked the day after the window closed.
Well, isn't that convenient?
Yeah, okay. A couple other people had promised to mail me packets, but I called the 800 number that was being advertised that you could kind of request a packet, and that was the only packet that arrived in the window and enabled me to send an application in. So then, by then, I'm all this is going down, and I'm working in McAllister, Oklahoma, and there's a whole series of silly things that happened up there. But I'm in McAllister, and I get the call, but I can take the test competitive. So I do, and I go to take it, and it's kind of like I get this postcard in the mail that's dated, my test date is July 1975. And I'm like, okay. And then I see other people that have sent in applications, and their test date was July 01. And I'm like, okay, I'm not very trusting at this point in time. So I show up.
I wouldn't be either.
I showed up at the test dinner, and they are giving a test on July 1, and I'm talking to the lady, and she is giving me a test. She is giving the test again on July 10th, but my name is on that list. And then she asked me if I'm a military controller, and I said, nope. And she pats me on the hand and said, well, honey, without military experience, you won't be able to pass this test. But if you want to plan to stay later, I'll kind of let you look at it, and maybe you can try again. Now, and I'm like, okay, but I thought it was the same test that I made a 94 on. But anyway, I go back and take the test on July 10th. You don't get your grades for an extended period of time, but I made 100 on the next go around. So I'm like, okay, so much for her theory that I can't pass it without military experience. And later on, I'm in McAllister, and they get the phone call to go to Tulsa to get an interview and a flight physical. So I call the mentor I had down there at the Wichita Falls Flight Service Station to tell him, hey, I finally got the phone call. And his words were like, don't tell me you're going to be here. You're not going to be here on Friday. And I'm like, be in Wichita Falls on Friday? I'm supposed to be in Tulsa on Friday. And he's like, no, I'm the one doing your interview. And I've got you set up with a doctor for your flight physical. So somebody was going to send me to the wrong place, wrong time. And I'm like, thank God I made that courtesy phone call.
Right.
Yeah. And
so the good old boy network was operating
full force. Yeah.
You out of the good old boy network.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Don't really want to name names, but you're like, but I'm slightly paranoid. And
just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you, Mary.
Exactly. I should have kept those envelopes with the wrong date on the postmark.
Oh, goodness. Well, what was school like? And how long was ATC school?
ATC school was 4 months long. And the first week or 10 days was a private pilot curriculum. Okay. So I'm already a flight instructor, so this is pretty simple stuff. And again, Mary's a troublemaker. Okay. So it's a private pilot curriculum. One thing we have to do is we learn how to use an E6B computer. Okay. Guess what? I know how to, but that's a one-on-one thing. And so the people are, there's 18 in a class. And at the time, the washout rate was approximately 50%. Okay. So 18 of us in the class, we expect 9 or 10 of us to make it through. That was the expectation. But I know an E6B. So the people around me, I'm like, okay, I can show you how to use the E6B. And the instructor is kind of like, I'm the instructor here. I'm the one teaching. And I'm like, sorry, I'm just trying to help. And we finally made amends, and he allowed me to help. Once he kind of like, I'm not trying to undermine him. I'm just trying to help my classmates get through this. And
understand, yeah. Let me take a quick second and explain what an E6B is. The E6B is basically a round slide rule for pilots to use, and it has all manner of calculations on it, from density, altitude, to airspeed, true airspeed, indicated, calibrated, yada, yada, yada. So it's a round slide rule, and it's not intuitive to use one.
Right. And it's basically, because it's small, it's one-on-one. I can, you stand up in the classroom, I can't see what you're doing, so I need to see it up close and personal. So it's a very one-on-one ratio to teach it, unless you've got the big, giant 6-foot one in front of the room. But
yeah.
Does anybody ever, do they still teach the basics with an E6B, or is it all
I do
on an iPad now? You do?
I do.
Good.
I do. And there's one famous Star Trek scene where Spock is using one.
Is that right?
That's awesome.
Yeah. And, and Leonard Nimoy is a pilot. So I think he did that on purpose.
Yeah. Okay.
But
that's funny.
But yeah.
Useful in intergalactic navigation.
There you go. You got to be able to work out that time speed problem. Their numbers, just more or less zeros.
Yeah.
And I don't know how light years work on that.
Right.
That's a separate column way on the outside of the ring, Mary. It's really small print.
Right. How many nautical miles in a light year?
I know the answer to that. It's 186. No, it's 186. Well, the speed of light is 186,000 miles per second. Right. I know that.
Yeah.
That's some serious multiplication.
Yeah, it is. 1 parsec. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. All right. Anything else interesting at ATC school? Or
17 out of my class of 18 made it through, so we're kind of very proud of how that dynamic went. For better or for worse, I was second from the top. My final score was 82. The guy who beat me was 84. You had to make a 70 to pass. So it was not an easy school.
Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, and I was like say 1976, I was 22. So I'm in this classroom, and one particular day, our normal instructor was out sick, so they had brought in a substitute, and he had nothing but overhead slides with basically offensive jokes and or stories on them. And I put up with it for about 5 minutes, and I got up and walked out and went to the break room. Students were not allowed to be in the break room outside of our normal break times. And I'm sitting there in the break room just daring anybody to come in there and challenge me why I'm not in my classroom as ordered, because you're like, you go in there and you tell me why I'm not in there.
Right.
But again, it was before some of the politically correctness had filtered in. I'm not going to be confrontational. I'm the only girl in this place. So I'll go sit over here in the corner and drink a Coke. And when it's time for a real class, I'll come back. And nobody challenged me.
Nice.
So where did you do your first air traffic controlling? Where did that take place?
23 years at Lawton, Oklahoma.
Oh, shit. 23 years. That's a minute.
Yeah. And then 3.5 years at Fort Worth Meacham.
3 years at Lawton.
Yeah.
And 3.5 at Meacham?
Yes. So one of the slowest airports in the country to one of the busiest.
All right. Yeah, it's busy in the Dallas airspace. No doubt about it. Let's get some good air traffic control stories in there. We've got a few: the Bandit, the Lear, the worst trainee, silly stories, violations, all kinds of stuff. How about a silly story?
Okay. Gosh. Now I have to go back and I didn't review this. How politically correct is this show? I had one of my coworkers. Okay, you got to have the backstory. So this young man was a devout Jehovah's Witness. Okay. I mean, he was offended by if anybody said hell or damn or anything, he was highly offended. He was the most straight-laced person that you have ever met. Okay. The nuns are more liberal than he was when it came to language. Okay, I presume. Okay. So, he's not going to say or do anything, whatever. So I'm working. I got a couple of C-130s in my pattern, just going round and round. And because I fly back and forth to work occasionally or a lot, they've met me over there at the airport side, so they actually know me. And so I'm working, talking to these C-130s. Then it's time for me to get relieved. And this Jehovah's Witness, I'm not going to say his name, but he takes over. And the C-130 pilot asks him, well, how do you like working with that cute little gal? And everybody in the tower has a comment, most of them not very flattering to me. And my coworker picks up the microphone, keys up, and says, it gets hard sometimes.
Oh, no.
I bet there was silence for 15 seconds while everybody was catching their breath. Did he just...
He said that out loud. About 15 minutes of silence. And I'm like, I am not working.
My gosh.
I am done. I am not going to talk again today. I'm going home. Sorry, guys. But this poor guy was far more embarrassed than I was when it clicked on what he had said.
Oh, my gosh.
And those C-130 pilots, you're like... It would have been fun to have a microphone in their airplane to hear what they were thinking or saying.
Oh, yeah.
But
they're terrified.
I can only imagine.
Can't say nothing. Maybe we can go Nordo.
Right. Yep. I put myself there for a second. That wasn't good.
Oh, yeah.
Whoops.
That's a hoot.
Yeah. One time there was a commuter taxiing out, and we had a previous airplane had hit an animal. So I'm telling this poor guy, clear for takeoff, use caution for a dead skunk on the taxiway. And the guy's like, we'll wait till he moves.
A dead skunk? We're going to wait till he moves?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, that sounds great.
And I'm like, this might take a minute. I don't know.
Maybe a tornado will come by and move him,
yeah, we'll wait till he moves.
Yeah.
And that same coworker cleared him for immediate takeoff, and he goes out, and our terminology, he laid an egg on the runway. Okay, but he just dawdles and dawdles. And once he's climbing out, then they ask, it's like, you were cleared for an immediate takeoff. And he's like, Tower, we're doing the best we can. And it's like, that's best you can do. Don't ever accept an immediate.
Right.
More dead. More air silence.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to back up for a second, Mary. You made a comment about flying to work. You said sometimes I'd fly to work and you'd park over by where you met those C-130 pilots and such. Where were you flying from?
I still lived here in Vernon. I still lived in Vernon.
Okay, and give me the distance. I mean, how was it far?
Yeah, just under 50 nautical miles.
Oh, so that was perfect. If you're flying back and forth, you probably did that in no time.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Roughly 25, 30 minutes. Sometimes I parked at the base of the tower and until there was a complaint like, well, what if everybody wanted to fly to work? And I'm like, I'm the only one with a pilot license. Come on.
Right.
But
they're just jealous, Mary.
Yeah, that's the way life goes. So then I had to park over at the other side of the airport and have a car to drive around. But it's the only way to go to work, right?
Yeah, I thought it would have been close, but you got this in here as a most embarrassing moment. What'd you do?
Yeah. No, that was the guy with the talking to my C-130 pilots.
It's hard.
Okay.
It's hard
That's
sometimes.
Yeah. That may be a show title.
I get it.
That may be a show title.
Oh,
What's so I'm looking at your notes. What's the go back to the kitchen? Was that a comment from somebody?
Yes.
On the radio or what was that? No,
this was from my manager when I was in the tower. And so one afternoon, I'm working. I'm by myself. I've got we had a military approach control, and so I've got an Army airplane that's trying to land and not talk to me, and then I've got the military approach control who is walking an airplane, and they've cleared him to land on my runway, also not talking to me, and then I've got an airplane that I am talking to, also trying to land on my runway. So I've got 3 airplanes trying to occupy my concrete at the same place and time. And
that's not good.
I did not like it. And so the next morning I'm pounding on the manager's desk, not literally, but anyway, this is not okay. You need to tell approach control that they can't use my runway. They can't authorize airplanes to land on my runway. And somebody needs to tell these Army guys that this is airspace and I'm the controller and they have to talk to me. And his comment was, if you can't handle it, maybe you ought to go back to the kitchen.
How did you not clock that dude with the heaviest thing you could find immediately? Or did you? Or did you clock that guy?
Mentally, I did. But I'm like, it was kind of like, how can anybody handle 3 airplanes trying to land simultaneously and you're only talking to one of them? It's fun times.
This should not be rocket surgery,
That's not rocket
should have had
surgery.
that. Yeah. No. So,
Exactly. I had my share of good managers, but I had my share of bad managers. Got to deal with it.
Mary, what's the wish flight?
Okay. When I got down to Meacham, we got these sick children. Okay, so this is probably going to be their last or their last Christmas. And so this guy had organized, and this had been going on for a while, but the first year I was at Meacham, we got weathered out. They didn't get to fly. The second year I was there, they put me in charge. I'm in charge of coordinating all of the pilots. We've got all these kids, their siblings, and their parents. We have 2,000 passengers to fly. I've got 60 volunteer pilots with airplanes. So I've got 60 airplanes to fly 2,000 people in one evening. And they told me that as soon as we started flying, it was going to go to hell in a handbasket. There was nothing I could do. And I took that as a challenge. And I organized and I briefed and I organized. We had a half a dozen meetings with the pilots. They had lanyards with the taxi routes. They had lanyards with the flight paths. I thought about it from every aspect that I possibly could. So between 7 p.m. and midnight, we flew 2,000 people with not a single go-around when they came into land.
Wow.
I know, right?
Well done.
Thank you. I'm like...
just by odds of numbers.
That sounds like Atlanta Hartsfield on a night, right?
Yeah.
It was...
for crying out loud. That's pretty impressive.
One thing that I did, and I had to fight the battle, we launched off one runway and they land on the parallel, and we wanted them to turn off at a specific intersection. If they were like, there was one intersection A and then B and then the end. And I'm like, I want them to turn at B not A, because B, if they turn off at A, we cross paths with the departing traffic taxiing out. So if they turn off at B, then it's an easy route. If they go all the way to the end, then it's an easy taxi route. So I put a flashing yellow light at the intersection of the runway and taxiway B, and they tell me, but that's not an authorized light. And I'm like, it's not unauthorized. Why can't I tell the pilots where to turn? So they're landing at night, and if they see that flashing light, they know whether they're going to be able to stop or not stop. And if they're not going to be able to make the turn, keep it hauling on down to the end and come off at the end, minimum delay on the runway. But they know where that flashing light is, so they're like, you can touch down and turn. Made it super easy. And just a simple thing like that made all the difference.
Give them a clue bird strike, as they say. Help them out. So, help them out. And it makes it work. Oh, God forbid you use common sense.
Right. And then sadly, the next year we had 9/11 happened, and then they wouldn't let us have wish flight that December. So I'm kind of still bummed over that. I wanted, like I say, my thought is we flood the airways, the news media, everyone with what's happening, and we are not going to let the terrorists win. We can still go out there and do what we think is the right thing to do. I lost that battle. But like I say, it was fun.
Oh, that's fantastic. That is fantastic. Get all those kids flying. How about we get to talking about a little bit of flying? You were CFI, CFII, MEI. So it tells me you like to instruct.
Yeah, it's all about me, all about I.
That's right. There you go. Another show title. So what tripped your trigger about instructing? And then I'll move into kind of how we met and why I'm even here this week.
Well, I've always enjoyed teaching. Okay. So whatever I do, I wind up typically teaching it. But sharing that information and changing somebody's future by giving them a skill is kind of like very rewarding emotionally. Flight instructing is not always financially rewarding, but if you do it well, it can be very satisfying. It is a good way to build hours, but primarily it's always been about I have a skill and other people need that skill. Let me share my information, what I have learned, what I know, and make you a better, safer, smarter pilot.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Who doesn't like that?
So let me tell you what Mary does here, Fig. This is kind of cool. And the way I found out myself, back in 2020, when my daughter wanted to learn to fly, I went over to the local airport and almost had to restart my heart when I looked at the price of a 172 rental with an instructor. And I went, we got to find another way. I'm going to buy an airplane to get some of my money back. My wife was like, well, you never get your money back. I said, I'll get some back that I wouldn't get back at all if we just do a straight up rental. So we found an airplane out in California, and my daughter and I flew out, and we were flying it back across the country. And the second day, we were flying from Carlsbad, New Mexico. We took off from the surface of the sun, and we're headed this way on a June day. And it was 105, 106 out, something like that. And we were just getting the heck beat out of us flying along. And we were headed to Lawton, Oklahoma. And about 30 miles west of Wilbarger County Airport, my alternator stopped charging. And it was an opportunity for my daughter to see, okay, here's how you handle wasn't really an emergency, but an abnormal pop-up. You pick a divert airfield and make sure you get the weather and everything's clear. And we jumped here into Wilbarger County, and we were met by Mary. We shut down, and she goes, well, it's going to storm tonight. Let's put you in the hangar. Okay. So she said, if it starts up, fine. Otherwise, we'll pull it over, and fired it back up. And, of course, the alternator was charging. So what's worse than an electrical problem? An intermittent electrical problem.
Right.
We spent the night, and she's like, well, you can go out in town and spend the night out in town in a hotel and pay $125, but we're closed down for COVID right now. You can stay here in the bunkhouse for the Gift Academy. That's GIFT, Girls in Flight Training Academy. And they were closed down and they had space. And so we stayed and we kept Mary's name. And my daughter recently graduated and has now decided to go ahead and pursue her CFI outside of Embry-Riddle. And here we are. She's getting her CFI workup done this week with Mary. Let me tell you, I wasn't kidding earlier. I've sat in on many of the sessions. this lady has forgotten more about aviation than a lot of people have ever learned. She just oozes knowledge. So that's been fantastic, fun to watch.
I love the name.
Yeah, it's perfect. And she does give back. She does. Tell us about Gift Week and some of what goes on there. And how many people do you think you've trained over the years, Mary? There's a good question to start with.
Hundreds. I don't know.
Oh, there you go.
I don't know if it's thousands, but it's definitely hundreds.
I bet it's thousands.
Yeah, I'll give you the backstory on how we got the name and gift and how it started. Okay, so in 2011, my granddaughter had soloed on her 16th birthday, which was May 10th, 2011. And a couple weeks after that, they were having the WASP homecoming down in Sweetwater, Texas. And I took my granddaughter down there because like this is kind of these were the ladies that kind of paved the way for us. And it's pretty impressive what all they did. So I take her down there. And each one of the WASPs at that time, there were still quite a number of them in attendance, but they each had a military escort that would bring them water, help them do whatever they needed, just kind of be their gophers, if you will. And so I meet this one young lady that's kind of helping to take care of one of the WASPs, and her name was Crystal, and she was a B-1 bomber pilot. And I'm like, how cool is that, right? And so I dragged my granddaughter over to meet the B-1 bomber pilot. And I'm like, Amanda, this is Crystal. She flies B-1 bombers. And Crystal, this is Amanda. She's 16. She just soloed 5 airplanes a couple weeks ago on her birthday. And Crystal looks at her and says, I am so jealous of you. And I'm like, whoa, back up. Why is a B-1 bomber pilot jealous of a 16-year-old kid? And Crystal tells me when she was a teenager, her parents would not allow her to take flying lessons. When she turned 18, she joined the Air Force, and there was nothing that they could do to stop her. And I'm like,
beautiful.
So I'm kind of like, and it hit me. My granddaughter was facing all of the same challenges that I had faced. Nothing had changed. And then I'm like, somebody ought to do something. Be very careful when you say those words. Do not pass in front of a mirror. You might find out who somebody is.
Right.
And
somebody ought to do something.
And so I was looking at the WASP, and they had a highly successful program. Those women were tremendous what they had done. And I got to thinking, would an all-female program be beneficial in today's world? Well, you won't know until you test the theory. So I said, okay, I'm going to throw it out there. And I thought that I would have women come from maybe a 200-mile radius of Vernon, Texas. Oh, no. They came from Maine and California and Florida and lots of places in between. Exactly. And why gift? Because I was going to throw this out there. First question is, can I give them what they want? Can I meet their expectations? Well, what do I charge them? What would be a fair amount? And it's kind of like, and if they don't like it, then how does that work? So I'm like, gift girls in flight training. I'm not going to charge them anything. It's not free. It's priceless.
Wow.
Boom.
And here we are. And part of it was also to find out what are the obstacles that women are facing that are preventing them from being successful in aviation. So you can't fix a problem until you identify the problem.
Mary, what year was that? That
was 2011.
All this came about.
2011. Okay. And our first event was in August of 2011, which is a lousy time to have flying in Texas.
Right.
August of that year was the 100th anniversary of Harriet Quimby becoming the first licensed pilot in the United States. So I had to honor that.
Oh, right.
And I was an examiner at the time. So I was fortunate to issue a lady a pilot certificate on August 11th of 2011, the 100th anniversary of Harriet Quimby. So that was kind of like, oh, how cool is this?
Right. Mary, let me ask. I'm going to beat you to the question, Fig. I'm going to beat you to the question this time, though, Fig, and we'll come back to that. Is how many hours do you think you have, Mary?
Somewhere between 25 and 50,000. I have no clue.
Did you? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I don't know. Honestly,
the low end of that is still more than twice the number of hours I have.
I had 10,000 in 1981.
There you go.
We throw around acronyms in our world like nothing, and we've continued to do that today. Would you please just define what DPE is?
Designated Pilot Examiner. So I was the one authorized by the FAA to administer the oral and flight test to issue the pilot certificates.
Okay, thank you. First of all, that's pretty badass.
It is
and
badass.
What she's not saying is there's not very many.
No.
Right?
No.
It's you have to have thousands of hours of instructing before you can even be considered for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So give us some DPE stories. From giving it an exam, I've got to imagine that people who show up, they're just a bag of nerves on a good day and arrogant. You've had, I'm sure, everything from terror to arrogance.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's been a wild ride. Everything in the world. I had a friend of mine. I'd done most of his training. He was a good friend, and he was so nervous when he walks into my office. And I asked him when he sat down, I'm like, Troy, did I grow a third head overnight? Because I'm sitting here, apparently I've got 3 heads the way he's looking at me. He's that scared. And it was wintertime. It was cold outside. And when we flew, and he passed, but when he got out of the airplane, he sweated so much that his shirt froze to his back when we came inside.
Oh, wow.
I was a little nervous.
Yeah. He's working hard.
Checkride-itis. Oh.
A little nervous. I get it. I had a guy that, we're supposed to stay 500 feet below the clouds. It's a regulation. We're climbing up. The clouds are sloping. Okay, the clouds at the airport, we were well under that 500, but as we're moving out towards the practice area, the clouds are getting lower and lower. And so I asked him, I'm like, so how far below the clouds are we supposed to be? 500 feet? Okay, so how are you determining that we're 500 feet below the clouds? And he's like, well, I'm going to climb up to the base of the clouds and descend 500 feet. And I'm like,
brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you had another
during
guess.
that time. So his logic was slightly flawed, but at least he had a plan.
He had a plan. It wasn't a suitable plan. We got to go back out and do this again. Oh my gosh. Oh man, there's you're like.
I'll bet that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh yeah. I had one young lady. I'm giving her. She's trained, so we're going out and we're doing stalls. Also, it's cold, and the airplane did not like being cold. Okay, and so we've done the slow flight, and then basically it's time to do the stall. So I'm telling her, okay, bring your power back to idle and just try to maintain your altitude until the airplane stalls and then recover. And so she brings the power back, and we're kind of slowing. And just before we get into the stall, the prop stops turning.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's not supposed to happen.
And she looks at me and this is, if you could read her mind, it's kind of like, this is not what happened during practice. We didn't do this. So I'm like, this is not part of the check ride. The engine is not supposed to quit. And I, basically I took over and kind of got it sorted out and got the engine back running. And then I gave her back the airplane.
Yeah.
Well, I should have given her time to set up an emergency landing, but this is the real deal.
Right.
I didn't go there. I'm like, fix it. You have an emergency, fix it, rather than give her a chance at fixing it herself. But
I would concur with that.
I want to take a moment here to thank our sponsor, HSI Wealth Strategies, and Robbie Walling. Don't be a moron. Give Robbie a call.
So there I was, staring at my retirement account, thinking, man, I should have talked to Robbie Walling at HSI Wealth Strategies about 20 years ago. Oh! I had a budget, a spreadsheet, a dream, but in reality, that's not enough, Fig.
Repeat. I've known Robbie for over a decade, and let me tell you, the guy's as solid as they come. In addition to HSI Wealth Strategies, he's an Air National Guard pilot. He's an aircraft commander in a C-130. He's sharp as a tack, and he gets us. Military and airline pilots aren't your average 9-to-5 crowd, and HSI isn't your average financial group.
Well, exactly. We're smart folks. Just ask us, right? We know how to plan a flight down to the minute. But planning a 30-year retirement, well, that's a whole different airspace there, man. And HSI knows how to navigate that.
On average, their clients end up with get this, $1.5 million more than folks going it alone. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because HSI knows strategies that most of us were never taught. It's not about working harder. It's about working smarter. How many times have we heard that over our career, right?
And yet we insist on not doing it so much to ourselves, right? You know, but here's the kicker. Look, right? It's not what you save. It's what you keep. Okay. Right.
Boom.
I mean, think about it. Between taxes and timing and the unexpected, because that never happens, you can lose altitude fast without the right plan. I wish I'd known that when I started out. But this is your chance to avoid the common pitfalls that you just don't think about without a solid financial planning background.
Right. I mean, you wouldn't fly a long-haul flight without a fuel plan, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you should know that. So why approach retirement that way? Because we're basically talking about kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
I talked to a guy, he's one of my peers, who has put money in all the right places, but had no idea that he was setting himself up for like a tax meltdown down the road. Smart guy. He just didn't have the right map.
Yeah, right. I mean, Uncle Sam has long fingers that reach way down into your pockets when you least expect it. Right. So let the professionals at HSI do what they do best so you can keep flying safely into retirement.
Yeah. Don't be a moron. Call Robbie at 214-538-7030. That's 214-JET-7030.
Or email him, robert.walling@nm.com. That's robert.walling, WALLING, at novembermike.com. Look, don't wait until your final approach to start thinking about retirement. Do it now. Your future self will thank you.
Trust us. Don't be that guy.
Don't do it. Call Robbie.
Mary, let me ask, we were talking DPE before we heard from our sponsor, and I want to ask you, did you ever change your mind while giving a check ride? In other words, were you going along and went, oh, this is going to be a failure, and then they did so well or did something and watered your eyes in a good way, I hope, and you went, oh, okay, I can go ahead and issue their ticket?
No, I mean, quite often it's kind of like the nerves get in their way on the beginning. Okay. Right. And so it's nerves that cause them to fail. And so you're kind of like, oh, we got that behind us. And then they can kind of relax. And I know they're going to do fine. But once I've told them, once they don't meet the standards, you're supposed to tell them immediately that this is not acceptable. This will be a disapproval. And so we will come back and come back again. But almost always, we both know how it's going to end on the next round because they've gotten over their nerves.
Gotcha. And once you say the F word, you can't unring that bell.
Exactly. And tell Fig what the F word is.
Fail, baby. Fail.
Nope.
I figured that.
No, the F word is funeral. If you try to put the fun in funeral, I have to say no.
Mary, what is the story behind the Hobart VOR?
Oh, this one was a gentleman taking an IFR check ride. And so part of your IFR check ride, you're out there navigating a VOR, which is a navigational device for those that don't know. So in this particular approach, you're supposed to start the timer when you get over the VOR. And then there's a step-down fix 5 miles past that. And then the airport is 5 miles past that step-down fix. So it's a pretty good distance from the VOR to the runway. And you said it earlier, something's wrong. So this young man, he gets out over the VOR and he's like, something's wrong. And I'm like thinking to myself, yeah, you're supposed to be starting a timer and descending. But he says something's wrong and we keep on going. And then he gets down to the step down fix and he's like, something's not right, but I have to get down. And so he starts his timer at the step down fix. And he starts his descent. And at that point in time, this is where the disapproval happened. But I need him to see the consequences of his actions. So he descends down to 400 feet, and our time runs out. We are well past the airport now. The airport is 4 or 5 miles behind us. And I tell him, okay, take off your hood. And we are eyeball to eyeball with these big, giant wind turbines.
Oh, yeah. Shit.
That's pretty pretty much what he said.
Of course, you saw it coming, but he didn't because he had the hood on.
Exactly. When he took that hood off and looked up, and he's kind of like, I would have died. And I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
And then, and it's kind of like, he sent me a written thank you note for that, for letting it play out and showing him that.
Oh,
who gets
nice.
a written thank you note for a failure?
For a failure to,
it was a good point.
And
for our non-aviation listeners, the hood that she's talking about, it's actually a kind of a hood that covers your face so you can't see out, but you can look down at the instruments. Right. So that's what you use when you're actually flying around and you're not in the clouds, but you need to be only flying on instruments. How'd I do?
Perfect.
Okay.
Something wrong, he says. He kept going. What about mag failure, a GPS failure, an engine failure? That may have been the one you already talked about.
Right. So the mag failure, okay, people appreciate this one. The young man and I we taxied out, and we had a pretty significant mag drop during our run-up. Can
I stop you? Can I stop you real quick?
Yeah.
Would you explain to our non-aviation listeners what a mag is and what a mag check is, what a mag does? Pretty please.
The magneto is basically a device. The engine turns the magneto, and the magneto creates a spark that goes through the spark plug, so it doesn't require electricity, but we only allowed a certain amount of drop. So when we check, we have two, so in case one fails, the other one is there to carry the load. We have to check them on takeoff, make sure they're both functioning, and the drop between the two is a little, right on the edge of what was acceptable. And you can kind of run it hot and pull the mixture out, lean the fuel a little bit so it'll run a little hotter. Sometimes you can clean them up. And it did clean up a little bit. And so we're like, okay, we'll fly. And as soon as probably about 50 to 100 feet in the air, the mag failed. Now, actually, we'd already been flying. We're doing our takeoff and landings at this point in time. So we're on our last takeoff. We've got one more landing to do before the young man gets his pilot license. And on takeoff, that mag failed. And now, running on one mag, I had to be other things going on, but now the airplane is only carrying about 2,000 RPM. Normally, we're running about 2,500 RPM. We are not producing much power, and we're barely climbing. And
this is not good.
Not good. And we're looking straight ahead, and I'm looking at where we're going to go if we're going down, because I'm kind of already about a 50-50. We're going down. And I tell the young man, turn now. We're only 200 feet in the air. And I tell him, turn now, because if we go down now, there's big transmission lines in front of us. And he's like, we're not at 400 feet. And I'm like, turn now. And I pointed and said, wires. And he understood immediately what I meant, and he turned. Then we turned downwind. We got almost to 500 feet on the downwind, which is a beam the runway for those that don't understand. And I asked him, I was like, do you want me to take over, or do you want to continue to handle it? And he's kind of like, if you'll let me, I'd like to handle it. And I'm like, I am now your best friend. I am not going to let you kill us. But he continued the landing, and he does I didn't have to do anything except tell him to make that turn. That was the only input that I made during the flight. And, I did call my daughter, who was in the terminal building, and I told her, keep an eye on us. We may be going down. Okay. So she was kind of like ready to call 911 if things didn't go the way we intended. We made it around to the landing, and he asked me what kind, I'm like, just land the airplane. Now, I'm not asking for a short field, soft field. I want you to just land the airplane.
I just want a field landing. Any field.
Land on pavement, please.
Hard surface, please.
Yeah.
So he managed that situation beautifully. You're like, I can't imagine a better test or a tougher test. So obviously he gets a pilot certificate at the end of the day.
Was that a private pilot's?
Yes, private
rating?
pilot.
Well done. All right.
So that was fun. I'm sorry, brain dead here for the moment. What was the other one?
It was the engine failure, the one you already talked about. The engine quit in the stall.
Yes, yeah.
What's so one? I'm looking at one that says close call in a Cessna 182.
Okay, that was another check ride, and so the lady was doing her performance landings, and we're about, I don't know, I'm guessing 4 or 5 inches off the ground. Got full flaps in a Cessna 182. Stall warning horn is on like it should be, and then a whirlwind got a hold of us. When these whirlwinds go across grass or pavement, they go invisible, so we didn't see it coming. And so it got a hold of us, and now we're about 50 or 60 feet in the air, and we still have full... yeah, and we're turned about 30 degrees to the runway, 50, 60 feet. Yeah, stall warning horn is singing like a son of a gun. I never had heard that last tone before. She's trying to push the nose over to recover from the stall because it's a private pilot check ride. Yeah. I'm trying to prevent us from landing on hitting the nose wheel. And I want to hit the mains.
She was pushing over and you were pulling back.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
And my poor brain, I'm like, one half of my brain is like, I got to fix this. The other half of my brain is going to be like, this is going to be real hard to explain to the FAA.
While you crashed on a check ride.
Yeah. And we're rocking and rolling because I don't know if a whirlwind is kind of like a little mini tornado. And, and so she's crammed in full throttle, and I reach over to hit the flaps, get the flaps started up, and we're rocking and rolling. I missed. Okay, So I didn't miss a second time, but when I did look at the airspeed, it said 0. Okay.
Oh, shit.
Flaps. Yeah.
Shit, that's bad.
Yeah.
On the good bad scale, that's bad. I assure you, everybody.
So, but we got the flaps coming up. She got the power in. We were able to keep it from hitting the ground, and we missed the ground. And we climbed up and climbed about 3,000 or 4,000 feet and just flew around for about 20 minutes just to get our blood pressure back down under control.
Yeah. Oh dear Lord. That's excitement that you just don't need. No.
This is why we practice stalls at altitude, so that if we get into an inadvertent stall situation 50 feet off the ground, you can survive it.
Yeah.
Don't try this at home.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Did I get off of Gift Academy too early? You've got a lot of stories from that as well, it looks like. You have Starting Over,
there's
Patty,
a lot there.
Stephanie, Speeding, Tragedy. I don't know if we want to go there or not. Don't want to be a bummer.
All of them are good. Since you mentioned it, everybody wants to know about the Tragedy. Okay. Yeah. It's day 1 of Gift Week 2017. And I've got 40 ladies that have showed up. So I got a full house. I've been giving the brief. I'm going to give the briefing in my hangar because that's the only room I got big enough for that many people. And there's a gentleman here, super nice guy, local dentist, who had he owned an L-39. Okay, Czechoslovakian military jet. Okay, he had 10 hours checkout in this aircraft. He was a self-taught aerobatic pilot.
Oh, boy.
Okay, not a good thing. And he's pulling his airplane out, and he's 55 years old and single. And, he's got to impress the ladies. And
he's got 40
so
ladies
I'm over
to
there.
Impress. Boy.
Exactly. And so he's pulling his airplane out and getting ready, and I'm telling my ladies, I'm like, he's a super nice guy. But please do not get in the airplane with him if he offers. I'm not your mother. I can't make you not accept a ride, but he's not a safe pilot. Please do not accept a ride with him. And I'm like, I've seen him do some things that are dangerous. And so around lunchtime, he's out flying. I'm teaching a class. The other classes have kind of split up. And anyway, so I'm standing there at the hangar doors, and I see him do a high-speed run down the runway. And I'm already spitting nails because I know he's showing off. And a few seconds later, and I can't see what's gone, I can only see straight out the window or out these doors. And a few seconds later, I hear all the screaming, and I run out the doors, and off the end of the runway is a plume of smoke. I know exactly what's happened. He tried to do a barrel roll or whatever kind of roll off the end of the runway. I've seen him do it before, about 400 feet. And when you're inverted, if you're getting too close to the ground, you're supposed to push forward on the stick. But if you haven't had adequate training, your instinct is going to be to pull back. And since he was a self-taught pilot or aerobatic pilot, he screwed up. Half my ladies saw it happen. And the other, we were all there. We're going to be like, okay, we're done flying. There'll be no flying today. We're standing down. No flying today. But the good part is I had warned them, and the next day they all flew. Nobody quit. Okay. They understood that, and that's what made me feel, like they witnessed a fatal accident, and they got back into they got in an airplane the next day. And because they understood that it's kind of like it was his choice. It wasn't the airplane. It was what I call deliberate misconduct, not pilot error.
That's something hard to see, but your assessment's spot on. And I'm glad none of your ladies went on a ride with him, because it would have been it. And then it really would have put a damper on things.
Exactly. That would have kind of
ruined
advice.
Things.
Yes. And Stephanie's kind of one of my favorite people. Her husband was a pilot. Okay. She was terrified. Okay. She did not like flying. She was terrified of it. And so he's kind of like, Stephanie, you got to do something, because when we go flying, you're scaring the kids. So she comes down to gift week. The bar was like, she wanted to be able to crawl in as a passenger with her husband and not be so afraid that the kids could pick up on it. Okay, she was okay with being afraid. She just wanted to be able to manage that fear so the kids wouldn't see it. Okay, so basically she flew with everybody, and she's still fearful. I finally fly with her. We go out, and I have my airplane, so it will fly at 70 knots when I release 80 miles an hour when I release the controls. I've got it trimmed up. I take the airplane up just above a stall, no power, and I let go. And she's crying, and she's screaming, and she's crying, and she's screaming, we're falling, we're falling, we're falling. And I'm like, no, we're descending. And I recover the airplane. And I'm like, I'm not going to let the airplane do anything that I can't fix. Do you trust me? And she's like, okay, I trust you. I said, we're going to do this again. And so we go back up, do exactly the same thing again. Now this time she's crying and screaming, we're descending, we're descending, we're descending.
Well, there you go.
And I'm laughing.
That's progress.
Yeah, at least he's not falling.
And then the airplane does what the airplane does, and it levels off at 80 miles an hour, and it's just flying along, sweet as she can be. And her next words is, can I buy this airplane? And I'm like, no, but you can buy one very similar. So when she went home, her husband was allowed to go and buy a Cessna 172. And 14 months later, she had her pilot license, and she flew her kids herself without her husband. Talk about a success story.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I didn't know where you're going with that, but I did not see that coming.
No.
Outstanding.
Yeah, and her husband thinks I walk on water.
Well, yeah, I would too.
Because, hey, you got to go buy an airplane.
Yeah. Get an airplane out of the deal. That's right.
Yeah. I've sold a lot of airplanes.
Right. Oh, man. Patty, if only you got a commission on all those airplanes,
I know, right?
Mary, what is Gunnison with a flight of 4 firelights?
Oh, I think that's 2 stories.
Not firelights. A flight of 4. I'm not.
Gunnison with a flight of 4? Okay.
And then firelights is below that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay.
I'm making shit up.
Yeah, sorry. Don't mix my stories up. So,
yeah, that's Mary's job.
Now you're scaring me.
Shit, I was terrified for a second. I'm okay now.
So, my corporate part of it, I'm flying a Conquest 2. Okay, a 441.
Okay.
A super capable airplane. And I'm going into Gunnison, Colorado. The instrument landing system, ILS at Gunnison, has the ILS minimums there are 1,003. Those numbers sound very familiar to most pilots because those are VFR minimums. You have to have 1,000-foot ceiling and 3 miles visibility. So these are ILS. We're doing the ILS approach to runway 6 into Gunnison. And we're not sure we're going to be able to make it. The weather is right on the edge. And so I do see the runway right at just before I got to the 3 mile mark. I got it. We're going to land on runway 6, except that there's this flight of 4 Cessna 172s that are landing on runway 24, the opposite direction. Okay, we got a 1,000-foot ceiling, 3 miles visibility, in a valley, embedded thunderstorms, and mountains. And I'm like, my airplane has the capability to get out of there. 172 does not. And so actually we were able to circle. We were able to maintain the airport and circle and landed behind them. We also landed on runway 24. And then the skies opened up as, shortly after we landed, is pouring down rain, i.e. embedded thunderstorms. And years ago, I created what I call these personal minimums cards. And so this is these guys are out of a university and they're doing a mountain flying course. Okay, so we've got an instructor and a student in each airplane. And as I say student, they're private pilots or higher working on advanced ratings. But nevertheless, so I've got 8 pilots. I handed out 8 cards and kind of like personal minimums cards. You guys need these. And one poor schmuck is he drew the short straw. He brings them back to me and he's like, ma'am, we don't need these. And I'm like, fine, I'll just read about you. And he didn't know what to do with that. But I mean, I'm like, but they've got the G1000, which is nice, sophisticated equipment, but it has NEXRAD radar. And there's a delay in that NEXRAD radar. So I took a photo when I took it back off, and the delay was, my data was 9 minutes old. And so they're flying around thinking they're navigating around thunderstorms with 9-10 minute old data. And, if you understand what we're talking about, that is deadly stuff. So I called my FESDO people and said, told them what the situation was. And it was like, it was his alma mater. So he kind of it's not cool to be flying in the mountains with a 1,000-foot ceiling and 3 miles visibility. You can't see the tops of the mountains. Who thinks that this is a good idea? And
what could possibly go wrong?
What could go wrong?
That's just terrifying.
Well,
speaking of terrifying, I vote we circle back to your opening story, whereupon you found thyself nose down, exceeding red line, and no way to pull out of the dive.
And the elevator didn't work. I still want to know what happened here.
Yeah.
And why the elevator didn't work.
Spoiler alert, she made it.
Well, I know how it ends because she's telling the story, but I kind of want to know how
it's
how
still
this
terrifying.
It was terrifying.
Because I can honestly say I've kind of experienced something like that back in the day.
Yeah. Who were you with, and how did this happen?
Okay, so I was a baby instructor. So this was 1975. And so I'm a 21-year-old flight instructor. I don't have a whole lot of experience. I had never had an emergency. But I'm going out with this student, and we're going to go do stalls. And it's kind of like maybe his second or third lesson. But we set up, and it's kind of like, all right, bring the power back. Bring that nose coming up. And when we get to the top of the stall, he does pretty much everything correctly. He pushes, if the stall breaks, and he shoves that nose over very aggressively. Okay, so now you get light on G's, and he had it in full throttle, but then he doesn't bring the nose back up. And I try to grab that elevator, and I'm pulling, and it's not responding. Okay, I putz with that for a few seconds. Guardian angels live live and well, because for some unknown reason, I had gone up 1,000 feet higher that day than I normally did to go do stalls with a student. Okay. So push that nose over. I mean, I looked at the airspeed once. We were right at red line. That's not beneficial. That's not helping. What can I do?
No. Okay, this is bad.
I grabbed the trim wheel. The trim, grab that trim wheel and pull that nose up. With those kind of speeds, the trim is highly effective. So I pulled us out of the dive using the trim, and I had reduced the throttle back to idle as well. But I pulled us out of the dive. We're 900 feet above the ground when I got the nose leveled off. So thank you and my guardian angels for that extra 1,000 feet. Yes. So what had happened is you have a bracket that has a pulley wheel for the elevator cable. And when we got light on G's, the cable got light and drifted off that pulley wheel and got wedged between the pulley wheel and the bracket.
Oh, shit.
and that's why it wouldn't move. And once I broke it loose with the trim wheel, and now I can move that elevator or the yoke, I can move it 4 or 5 inches without doing anything. So I'm like, okay, we pop the doors open, cinch down our seat belts. I'm going to land using trim and throttle because it's about all I've got. And I told my young man, it's like, we're probably going to wind up upside down because I don't know that I'm going to be able to get the nose up to flare for the landing. But I'm like, landing upside down just seems like a walk in the park at this point in time. But when it got into the flare, I went ahead and pulled on the elevator. And once you got about 3 or 4 inches of movement, then I had authority. So it was a very uneventful landing and taxied in. And then once
ran
I've
away
had
from
an
that
adrenaline
airplane.
hit, well, that airplane had some other nasty habits, but I walked away from it. My legs turned to jello when I got out of the airplane.
Sure.
But.
And your student.
Would you explain, because you kind of breezed over it, why you guys popped the doors open?
When I'm pretty sure that we're going to wind up upside down, and if the doors are latched, you won't be able to get them unlatched, or the fire rescue people may not be able to get them open. If they're not latched, then you ought to be able to kick them and force them open to get out.
Bend them
because you're afraid if they're closed, the frame will bend and keep the door from opening.
Exactly, I won't be able to get the door open. So
that's a general aviation thing that you talk about when you're going to maybe end up not in a good situation. Not with an ideal landing at the ideal spot.
That's right.
Exactly. That's easy. Just think about before you undo your seatbelt, who's going to go first?
Tell us about your student at the end of the flight. Did he go, let's do that again? Or how clued in was he that it was as bad as it was?
He was too green to have a clue how close we came to dying.
Oh, boy.
He didn't have... He wasn't, it traumatized me, but it didn't bother him, because because he
didn't know. He didn't know what he didn't know.
Right.
Exactly. And he thought everything was kind of like, I don't even know what he was thinking when I'm like, it was just a normal landing, right?
Right. And you had something you didn't have when you took off. Experience.
Exactly.
More experience.
I had never had an emergency. And so as a... you're going to have an emergency, but you're like, you think you're going to be having like an engine failure, and you always wonder if you're going to manage it well and how you're going to react when you have an emergency. After that, like the idea of an engine failure doesn't even seem scary at all.
Right.
You're just kind of like
having a flight control failure is a real attention getter.
Yes.
Yeah.
With an engine failure, as long as you can still fly the plane, well, you can control it to a safe landing somewhere, or at least point it in a good direction.
So far, so good.
Flight control. With the flight controls not operating, now you're maybe not in control anymore, or have complete control. That's what we call an attention getter.
That's right.
There you go. Had my attention.
So I will stipulate that was your worst emergency ever, and I may be wrong. But I'm guessing I'm not. What was your second worst emergency ever? What was the other time, any other time you went, this could end badly if I don't fix things?
Okay, well, I got a couple of them. It's kind of hard to know which one we'd call, I'll let y'all categorize. So one of them was I was in a Skymaster on an IFR flight plan. I'm about 20 miles north of DFW. I'm by myself in the airplane, and I have a total electrical failure. And I am solid IMC. I am in the clouds. So basically, I'm up there, and I'm like, everything, my radios no longer work. I can no longer navigate. I don't have anything except, my attitude instruments and my compass to tell me whether I'm upside down or going straight. But I have no information on how to get to an airport, much less, before we had GPSs and iPads and all those cool things.
Right.
And I'm like thinking to myself, it's kind of like, they have all these rules or what you're supposed to do when you have loss of communications in IFR conditions.
Right.
Nobody told me what you're supposed to do when you also can't navigate. And so I'm like, And I'm like, now I brief. It's kind of like, before I take off on an initial flight, is there VFR weather within my fuel range? And if so, where is it? So I at least know which direction to point the nose.
Okay.
And
point the wet compass and fly.
Exactly. And so what I did that day was I just turned around, took up a reciprocal heading, and then I'm flying home, and I'm like, kind of a couple things going on, hoping that there's not another airplane in my way, because
there's
they can't see my transponder, and I'm in very busy airspace, and like I say, and I'm hoping that I'll break out into good weather before I run out of gas. So that was also quite terrifying.
Yeah.
And
so what did happen? I'm assuming you broke out, or did you get partial electrics back, or what? How'd you get out of this mess?
I'm flying along, just kind of holding a heading that should take me towards home. And at one point in time, I saw a hole in the clouds. It was not an adequate hole to maintain cloud clearances, but who cares? I could look down through the hole and see Mother Earth. So I descended below the clouds and made VFR conditions and stayed there and made it home.
Oh, that's fantastic that you managed to do that. But just absolutely, that just sends a chill up my spine thinking about being in the goo and losing all of your ability to do anything but maintain your wings level and pick a heading. And, no hope of getting an instrument approach anywhere, no hope of talking to anybody to get you a vector to good weather or to a good airport. And, oh, man, talk about the deck stacked against you.
Yes.
Oh. Well, and you talk about another emergency that you kind of always prepare for, and that's engine failure. Have you ever had an engine go out on you? We talked about the one, obviously, it was on the check ride. That's not supposed to happen, but that one managed to come back. Have you ever had one that wouldn't come back?
Yes, I've had, like I say, one of them was on takeoff. Okay.
Ooh.
And so I'm with a student. Bad time, yeah. And she's, pretty solo, but still competent on the takeoff. So she's rolling down the runway and we lift off. And I look over and, we're not climbing well, but the airspeed's bleeding off. And I'm like, and then I realize, oh, crap. Oh, because our power's gone back to idle. And she's got full throttle in there. And so I take the airplane. And, so basically, we're barely in the air, but we're still over the pavement. And so I chopped, we were producing a tiny bit of power, but I just lowered the nose and landed. And we did run off the end of the runway, but it's kind of like there's nothing off the end of our airport here. So I'm off in the dirt off the end of the runway. And then I pulled on the carburetor heat and the engine goes, whoom. And I'm like, I don't understand.
Wow.
But I taxied back, and what had happened is the hose from the air filter to the carburetor, when the carburetor was pulling as much air as it could, that hose collapsed. And so when I pulled on the carburetor heat, we're bypassing the air filter, and now the engine is running pretty much almost full throttle. But needless to say, I went and parked that sucker and said, okay, we'll do this another day.
Right. Because here, I imagine you get some carburetor ice here, but this part of Texas, it seems like icing is not often much of a consideration.
No. I've only really had one serious carburetor icing incident. Okay. It was back when I was flying back and forth to school, going to A&P school, and I had my little L3, and I had my baby daughter in the back seat, and she was quite entertaining back there, but because she couldn't see out the window, so if she got bored, she would take that stick and just move it all the way to the side and roll us up on our side so she could look out the window for a few secones. First time she did that got my attention.
Talk about students trying to kill you. You don't expect your own kids trying to kill you.
Well, not until they're teenagers anyway.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But anyway, so we're flying to Wichita Falls early one morning, and it's early. The sun is barely not quite up yet, but it's kind of that twilight part of morning, and there's a full moon. Okay. I'm looking, I can see my reflection in this pond. And I can see my reflection of my airplane. I can see the reflection of the moon in this pond, and it's kind of like this surreal experience. It's just incredibly beautiful, and I'm entranced and not paying attention to what's going on with my engine until I look up and I'm like running about 500 RPM less than I should have, and I didn't. So I did pull on the carb heat, and melted the ice and went on to work. And I slapped myself for being distracted by this surreal moment in watching the moon and my airplane reflected in a pond.
Yeah.
But you do get carburetor ice around here.
Yeah. Well, we're getting close to a point where we need to wrap up. What do you think your worst loss of separation in ATC history without scratching any paint, without loss of life?
Yeah. So on that one, I had departed Dallas Love, headed northbound on a Vector, of course, and I'm assigned 2,500. And then they're going to turn me westbound, which will take me across the north end of DFW. Okay, that's the way it always goes. But at that point in time, they're supposed to climb me to 4,000. And I'm waiting for the clearance of 4,000, but I never got it. So I'm staying there. And actually, I'm cheating because at 2,500, I'm assigned 2,500, but the clouds are at 2,500. And I know things are about to go bad. So I'm at 2,400, staying, just skimming the bottom of the clouds, but I can still see the ground because I know that the airplanes coming off DFW are climbing to 3. And I'm being vectored due west over the north end of the airport, north flow. So these airplanes are coming off DFW, got 4 runways launching, and they're climbing to 3,000 feet. And I see them, and I'm looking at them, and I'm like, getting closer and closer. And after a couple minutes, I'm bobbing and weaving to actually avoid hitting air carriers. And I get the other side of it. He says that a lot.
Yeah.
So I get to the west side of DFW. The controller says, 7 Bravo Whiskey, say your altitude, 2,500. Climb immediately to 4,000. And I'm thinking, a little late, but elevator's going up. And I climb up to 4,000 feet, and I go home. And I know they're going to be playing these tapes for the next 20 years at DFW because this was bad.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm okay. Nothing bad happened. Then a couple weeks later, there's a controller meeting, and the chief of air traffic is there. And whatever the topic was, can't remember. But it's like, ladies and gentlemen, before we start, we need to talk about DFW recently had the worst loss of separation in ATC history without loss of life. We lost separation with a Skymaster and 10 air carriers. And I looked at him and I'm like, but Larry, I was only going to hit one of them.
Only going to hit one.
Only going to hit one.
I'm only going to hit
all
one.
10, even if I tried.
No, can't get a strike.
So he looks at me like, what? And I'm like, yes, I was flying the Skymaster. And
that's funny.
Like I say, I did not. It wasn't at the time. Those controllers at DFW didn't think it was funny either. But like I say, being situational awareness, you knew what was happening. You know what you have to do to make bad things not happen. So you do what you need to do.
Right.
I have so many possible titles for this podcast already queued up here, buddy.
Right.
That's one of them. I was only going to hit one.
I was only going to hit one. Yep. Fantastic.
Wow.
Fantastic. Goodness. Sadly, we've been going an hour and a half or so, and it feels like 10 minutes.
It does.
Time has got away.
It
I hate to bring this as a reminder, but somebody's got to go to the aeroporto.
Oh, and work. What an outrage. Well, I can tell you this. We've got to have Mary back because she's told about maybe 15% of the stories that she has written down. And she's going to be putting a book out, among other things. But she has a lot of stories and oozes knowledge. It's so much fun to sit and chat with her about this stuff. So thank you, Mary, for joining us. We're deeply grateful.
With a pilot between 25 and 50,000 hours. And, 20, hold on, let me do my quick math in my head. Just call it 27 years of air traffic control experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
all the flight hours and instruction and
I have the Wright Brothers Award and the Charles Taylor Award.
I forgot to mention that. Yep. So those are the Wright Brothers Master Pilot Award and the Charles Taylor Master Mechanic Award for 50 years of excellence in each field.
That's damn impressive.
Right?
Not too many people.
That's damn impressive for a lady who was with the good old boys were trying to run right out of the aviation field. Right?
Right.
Did I mention I'm stubborn?
Thank you for sticking with it.
Indeed.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for sticking with it and changing so many lives in such a positive way. And she's still doing it to this day. So good on you, Mary.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Very impressive. Very honored. Very honored to hear your stories. And I look forward to seeing your book and hearing more stories.
All righty. I enjoy telling my
Must be fun.
stories.
Yeah. Well, Fig, we need to get a couple of thank yous out of the way and land this airplane. First, I think we need to say thank you to all those who are in military service, active, and veterans and their families who sacrificed so much to make this country what it is for us. They have indeed selflessly given of themselves so that we can enjoy the freedoms that we have. Thank you.
Well said, sir. Thank you for saying it so eloquently.
Absolutely.
We need to thank Dave Hamilton and Sarah? Sadie.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Sadie over at Backbeat
Dave and
Media.
Sadie, thank you.
Yeah. Backbeatmedia.com handle our advertising, so thank you for that. Hey, if you like these shows, could you wander over to stereotypes.us/rate and follow the links to give us a 5-star rating. Count them 5, not 4. Don't do
Not
it.
4.
Yeah.
5. If you
5
can't
stars.
give us 5, tell us what we can do to make it a 5. Because
Right.
we're trainable, for crying out loud.
Right. We are indeed trainable. So, and we've got to get a couple other thank yous in there. Sticks and Bago for all the production work you do for us. We're deeply grateful to you for that.
I love those guys.
Right. Yeah. They help us out.
Badass Silcott at BDS Aviation Photography.
.com. Yeah. Thank you, Badass. Appreciate all you do for us. He's got a few Harriers left. The day we're recording this, we got word that the last Harrier squadron is nothing less than the Great American Bulldogs, VMA 223. VMA 231 has flamed out.
They flew their last flight today.
Yep.
No, wait, that's not. I thought there was one that was. I thought there was a plane that was getting delivered on.
Well, they're moving the planes.
Friday
but
the 13th
squadron,
of June.
Yeah, as a squadron, they're
yes,
done.
Yes,
Yeah,
you're right.
So they're moving the airplanes out across
sorry.
the country to various museums. One's going out to Arizona, the Pima Air Museum. Another one's going up to Wings Over the Rockies. They're in Denver a few days after the
You know what I
concert
find
that's coming.
ironic?
What?
You know, I just want to say this. What I find ironic is VMA 231 is putting Harriers all over the country in museums, but the Dos Gringos are putting on a concert to raise money to bring an F-16 to the museum that the Marines just dropped one off for.
Right.
There you go. It's yours. Have it.
Right? It's
What
all
the hell?
yours.
This is a...
Air Force
I
getting
think
stingy with their
there's some-
F-16s. Give some away, boys.
Something is going on. We need to get to the bottom of this. Something is not
Absolutely.
right.
Absolutely.
You need to look into this.
We'll get Mary on it.
we need
She
to
has
get
friends
Sticks
at
to
the
look into
FAA.
Yes.
So, all right. So there it was, .us/merch. Go get yourself a cup, a beach towel, a bikini, a clock, a shot glass. We got all kinds of cool merch. There it was, .us/merch. Have any questions, you should reach out via email. How do I get an email there, Fig?
Well, you can send it to fig@sothereiwas.us.
Or repeat. So there I was.
So there I was.
Yeah.
If you want real answer,
Well,
send it to sticks@sothereiwas.us.
Or Bago. Yeah.
Or Bago.
That's about it.
Bago and Sticks are the real brain.
They know how this works. They can make it happen. So trying to think, I've always seemed to forget that there's one other thing or maybe two other things, Fig.
That beautiful music in the
There it
background
is.
is nothing other than the Dos Gringos.
Indeed.
Thank you to the 2 F-16 pilots that make the Air Force sound good.
They do indeed. And we're hoping to get a chat with them coming up at the concert on June 7th. So if we can do that, we'll make it happen and bring Snooze and Trip to you. So until then, yeah, pack your parachute in case your elevator jams. That's my advice till next week.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond of all the shit I was wearing on that day. Now an F-16 is cramped enough, but it's even worse with all that stuff supposed to save your life. But we knew there was no way. going down in the North Atlantic, man, it's over.
Hold on. What did he say?
He said it's over.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
And we are out.